I think that families, parents really need to get involved in the education of their own children, but don't expect the school to do everything, because some schools are better than other schools, some teachers are better than other teachers.
Hi, my name's Phil Dye, and this Filtered Mini is all about creating a better education system for Australia. It's a system that gives parents choice, it is fair for everyone, and it gives our kids a better standard of education. It's 12 minutes and a game changer. Here we go. The education formula in Australia is based on the public system, which is funded by government, and the private system, which is mainly funded by the individual, but also with additions from the government. But there's this constant argy-bargy between proponents of the public sector and those who favour the private sector. It's a public versus private debate. Is the private schools, are they getting too much money? Are the public schools getting enough? What we should have done is take a lead from the UK, where instead of the government funding the system and funding the private schools, funding the public schools, they actually fund parents according to their children. So in the UK, for example, every child gets a certain amount of money to go to school. Now, they don't get the money, of course, and really either do the parents, but it's allocated to that child, and the parents decide where that money is going to go for their education, for that child, for that year. So what we need is a completely different system, a system that is not controlled by government. It's not controlled by the most recent fad that comes in, and it's a system that gives parents choice. My guest for this episode is Catherine Birbalsingh from the Michaela School in Wembley. I interviewed Catherine before tongue cancer shut me up for a while, and this is an edited version of that, but with special attention to the school formula and for building a new school system in Australia. Because coming up to a general election, if a political party can embrace this system, the free school system, as a policy, they would get nearly every parent's vote, I can tell you. What is a free school?
The free schools in Britain came about in 2010. The idea is to give the school certain freedoms that perhaps ordinary community schools wouldn't have, to be able to do things differently.
But do you have to follow the national curriculum, everything that's in that?
So the freedoms that I referred to mean that you could not follow the national curriculum if you didn't want to. And we decided we wanted this ethos and we were moving forward with it. Whereas with other schools, you'll get some teachers who are traditional, some teachers who are progressive, some teachers that are in between. All of our teachers here are traditional. And that's because we went forward, we started with that ethos.
And as Catherine said, the free school system started about 16 years ago under a Conservative government, and it's been carried on by the Labor Party under Starmer, because they would know that if they tried to dump the free school system, there would be an outrage. But does the government exert any authority at all? Let's hear the answer from Robert Peel from the West London Free School.
They would call these schools free schools because these schools were free from local authority control, but they would have the autonomy to do things differently. We pioneered the knowledge-based curriculum. We are strict, but we're very warm as well. And we trained our staff in teacher-led direct instruction approaches. So this ability to challenge progressive ideas by establishing new institutions, I would say, is one of the most successful government policies in the UK in the last 15 years.
So if free schools have autonomy, what about exams? I asked Catherine about this.
There isn't a single free school that isn't following the national curriculum.
Everyone is, because they've got to do the same exams, I suppose.
They have to do the same exams. Parents would be very concerned if you were not, offering the national curriculum. But we are a free school, and we have done things very differently, even though we're following the national curriculum.
So in the case of an Australian free school, or it could be called an open school, whatever they want to call this type, it could be a matter of excluding students with certain characteristics. For example, a student who has exhibited poor behaviour, terrible behaviour, they've been expelled from 2, 3 schools. Now the rules in Australia are that some other school has got to take them. But A free school or an open school in Australia could say, no, you've been expelled from this school, we are not going to accept you. That's their ethos. Another one could be to not accept students who can't speak English. It could be that the school does not accept students with some disabilities. At the moment in Australia, a student with a disability has to be put into a mainstream classroom, all under the DEI, Diversity, Equity and Inclusion banner. That means that some students with extreme disabilities cannot learn, they cannot understand the curriculum, they have to have a special teacher's aide with them all of the time, and the poor students, and it's not their fault, cannot achieve. The government has been closing down schools for special purpose. Those special schools who could employ teachers who are equipped to deal with these students and best help them on their way. At the moment, it's being left up to mainstream teachers who aren't trained in all of this. My daughter was at a public school and there was a boy at the back of the class with a special assistant teacher who was calling out constantly. He was yelling, he was calling out. He had extreme autism and cerebral palsy. Not his fault at all that he was there. He didn't ask to be there. But here he was in the mainstream classroom and disrupting it every 30 seconds with calling out, with screaming out. The free school or the open school in Australia could say, no, we are not accepting that child. That child belongs in a special school with special teachers who can bring out the best that that boy is capable of. But this school is not for him. So why does our government in Australia not have the concept of free schools? One reason is that the government would lose control of the ideology that's being preached to children in our schools. What the kids should think. Not teaching them how to think, but what they think. And with free schools, they would lose control of that. Another reason is that our schools seem to have lost control of boundaries and standards. Behaviour is terrible in a lot of our schools. Free schools may well instill those boundaries, instill discipline and bring back standards. I asked Catherine what she thought about that.
If you hold your standards really high, and I'm holding my hand up here, they'll meet you up there. And if you hold your standards down here, and I've moved my hand down now, the children will meet you there. Children will always meet you at whatever standards you set for them. You're just letting those kids down even more when you lower your standards for them.
So the low expectation really doesn't do them any favours whatsoever.
No. The fact is, you don't have to be mean to them to hold them to high standards. They know if I don't do my homework, I'm going to get a detention. So you give them a detention.
Yeah.
You don't have to snarl at them. So our whole sense is about giving them moral purpose, explaining the difference between right and wrong, teaching them gratitude and kindness and self-sacrifice, putting others before yourself, behaving like decent human beings.
Phil would really appreciate it if you could like or comment on this episode. Better still, share it with others. Thanks.
So how would this work in Australia? Well, every child gets an allocation according to their age and the year they're going into. So just imagine that every child from kindergarten to year 3 gets a $10,000 allocation to their family. Every child from year 4 to 6 gets, say, $12,000 allocation. Every child from year 7 to 10 gets $16,000, and every student in 11 and 12 gets $18,000. You can't go to McDonald's or Woolworths and spend it. It goes on to your account, where you would then allocate that money to the school of your choice for that year. Well, what about if you decide to homeschool and you decide you're going to homeschool them from kindergarten to year 3? Well, you will get $10,000 per year to spend on their education. Fair enough, isn't it?
Young people swim in a culture of instant gratification. And if you think Gen Z is bad, just you wait till you see Gen Alpha.
Just imagine there's a family with two children. Alice, she's 11 years old and she's in year 5. Ron, he's 14-year-old and he's in year 8. So let's say all year 5 students in Australia are allocated $12,000. So Alice in the family account would be allocated $12,000 for that year. Ron, who's in year 8, he gets $16,000. So Ron, for his education, would be allocated $16,000. Now, for both of those amounts, the parents can spend it where they wish. They can spend it at a public school, absolutely fine. They can spend it at a private school, but they might have to top that up. They could spend it at a free school, a school that can have discipline, that can instill accountability and responsibility with students, that doesn't have to abide by government guidelines and controls. That doesn't mean that a school could be set up to promote Islamic State beliefs. It would have to fall within the law, of course. But when Alice shifts out of year 5 and goes on to year 7, she'll be allocated more money. And Ron, when he moves into year 11 and 12, will be allocated perhaps $18,000. It gives the parents choice according to the school that best coincides with their values.
Yeah, so we have a lot of freedom here. You know, the school advertises for their staff, appoints their staff. They can move their staff on if necessary. That is all up to the school.
So a free school or an open school in Australia could recruit their own teachers and could sack their teachers. It gives an autonomy. It ensures quality of learning. It gives a sense of choice to parents. And it gives some standards to the students. And one thing I forgot to mention is that some of the free schools in the UK do have an extra payment. For example, if it's a $10,000 payment to your account from the government, you may have to pay an extra $1,000 or $2,000 depending on the location of the school and what they offer. So parents, don't go rushing to Google and try and find a free school or an open school in Australia. But Pauline Hanson and One Nation and the Liberal Party and Family First and whoever else might be listening, I urge you to take this on as a part of an education platform, because we badly need changes in this country. My name is Phil Dye. You've been listening to Filtered. Please share this podcast, comment, like it, or even better, become a subscriber through the Substack platform. I'm going to leave you with the voice of Catherine Birbalsingh. See you later.
The policymakers need to do what's hard and make it so that schools can do what we do, which is to hold kids to account, have strict discipline, to have traditional teaching methods. You know, the idea of making teaching fun and interactive, it makes us all think, oh, that feels great for us, and it looks good. But did you learn anything? I think what matters is whether or not you learned something.
This has been a basic overview of what Australia's free school system may look like. For more information, email phil@phildye.au.